Hi. Um, I'm just gonna. You mentioned a lot of about like in another 2-3 years, as far as the roadmap of the AR and VR was concerned, and I'm just trying to understand what are the use cases which you anticipate will first hit, because obviously there's a little bit of a problem over here. A $3,000 device, as you mentioned, it's not something which is available to anybody anytime soon. I mean, unless the devices are like dirt cheap. What typical use cases would be, it'll be getting into, which will cause the usability of these technologies to kind of explode?
So I think there's kind of two answers to that question. I think one of them is there's low-hanging fruit, and then there are questions. So there is low-hanging fruit. There are certain types of games, particularly for VR. There are certain kinds of live event. You have the best seat in the house. There are some live events where there is no best seat in the house, like watching football from the side of the pitch is actually a terrible experience. So like people who experimented doing football in VR, turns out it's actually not a great experience. But tennis or basketball or some other things works really well. Concerts are another example where you can have a really great experience. Beyond that, people are experimenting and trying to work out what kind of content would you create. I mean, it is a little bit as though you'd invented Xbox in a world where there are no computer games, and you've got this thing that can do 1 trillion polygons per second, and you're like, well, fine, what the fuck do I do with that? And we're still, in a sense, trying to work that out. I think there's another kind of answer to your question, perhaps, which is that I started my career at the kind of the top of the 3G bubble, the mobile bubble, and the internet bubble, and I spent like 2 years of my life having investors ask me what is the killer app for 3G, and it turned out that the killer app for having the internet in your pocket was having the internet in your pocket, and there wasn't a killer app, it was just the whole experience. And I think that would be the kind of the other answer for VR is you put the thing on, it's like, okay, this is amazing. There's 50 things I could do with this. I'm not just going to do just this one thing. The question is how broad it is. Whether it can be broader than games in certain kind of events, or whether it can turn it into like the new TV, the new movie. And we don't yet quite know how broad it can go.
Okay.
I have an augmented reality naughty dating app for good girls. Is that investable? Are you guys going that far that soon?
So other than the contradiction of naughty good girls, which I'll let go, it sounds a lot like, okay, right, okay. I wouldn't know anything about that, sorry. I think, so this sort of sensible answer. First of all, we are too far away from, let me try to give a helpful answer. So when I talk about augmented reality, what I'm really talking about is sort of fundamental material science breakthroughs, such that I can be wearing a pair of glasses, potentially in the future, like 20 years away, contact lenses, such that it looks like there's another person standing in that aisle who isn't really there, or there's a robot standing in that aisle that isn't really there. That's what I think of when I say augmented reality. There's another kind of augmented reality, which is I point my phone at you and something appears on the screen of my phone, which I think is what you're talking about. Yeah, exactly, Pokemon Go style. We've got one term denoting kind of two things. So at that point, so the kind I'm talking about is 5 years away, so it's not investable unless you've got like unless you're the new Magic Leap. Right now, potentially, that's the kind of question about the mechanics of the dating space, what one thinks about Tinder relative to other things. There's a more involved conversation about yes and no and maybe for that than I can have now, but I can talk about it later.
One more question, guys. We're running out of time. Oh, boy, I'll do that one.
Yeah, hi, you talked about AI, machine learning. I was thinking, what are your options for blockchain? And if you can make one joke on blockchain. Second question.
I'm sorry, I can't remember any jokes on blockchain. That was last year, guys, sorry. I can make bots jokes all day. Yeah, I mean, I think all technologies go through a kind of a hype cycle and then a realism cycle, and there's a hype cycle for blockchain where now we've got a bunch of really interesting people sort of building stuff and trying to work out what's going to happen with that and what the real use cases for that are, as opposed to what are the, okay. I mean, this is, one of the AI jokes is like, have you actually built up machine learning, or have you just got 250 if statements? And machine learning basically is a shitload of if statements. So there's a lot of people who built 150 if statements and said they're doing machine learning. And there were a bunch of people who said, well, we've got an on-prem closed blockchain. You're like, well, isn't that a database? So there's been there will be shakeouts around all of this stuff, but I don't have a strong view on blockchain beyond that. Let me give you another answer. Blockchain is like this foundational computer science breakthrough that lets you do something you could never do before. I could never give you a file and not have it myself before. And blockchain lets you do that. And it feels like that ought to be kind of important and useful. Working out quite how, we're still working through. But that fundamental point that I can give you something and no longer have it, that I can do this in a fundamentally trusted way, that's kind of important. We'll just have to work out quite how it's important.
Great. Thank you so much, Benedict. This was great.